friends, welcome back to my channel. I do have a mic this time, so hopefully the audio is a little better. I don't really have anywhere to clip it, so it's not moving around a lot. So you'll have to forgive me if it's like kind of iffy while I'm trying to figure out things. But I appreciate your patience. This week I wanted to talk about one author that I really love, and she was mentioned in the last video because she just had a new book come out this year. No way of hiding it because it's going to be in the title anyway. Ali Hazelwood. I mentioned in the last video that when I read The Love Hypothesis, it was the book that kind of brought me back into my love of reading, because I read this in the summer of 22, and I actually found this book, it's a book of the month edition, but I found it in my dorm during like the donations when everyone was moving out, and I was like, oh, I've seen this on Instagram because I'm not on TikTok, and everyone loved it, and it was supposed to be a really cute romance, and I love romance, so I grabbed it, and didn't get to read it until I was at home a few weeks later. But once I picked it up, I read this in one sitting, and everything skyrocketed from there for me. Because I made a goal of 50 last year and met that goal just in the summer alone, which I unfortunately did not have as much time this summer, but I'm lucky that I had that time last summer, and kind of this book I can thank for getting me to, Bookstagram and even here on BookTube. So I want to talk about these books maybe a little more in detail. It's been a while since I've read the first two, so my memory's like a little iffy. I have no script, no real plan, just vibes. And so that's what we're gonna go with. And yes, it does bother me that this is my only not book of the month copy, so they don't all match, but it's fine. They're pretty together. So if you don't know, The Love Hypothesis is a fake dating STEM romance. All of these are, STEM related, which I don't even know what STEM stands for, besides like science and math, which I am not a STEM girly. I don't like doing science. I don't like doing math. But I really appreciate, the people that do. And so these books are kind of fun for me, like getting out of my comfort zone in a way, and like kind of learning some new things while still having a cutie romance. So Love Hypothesis is a fake dating story between a student and a professor. But that sounds like really bad, I feel like, especially since I'm in college. But they're in grad school. She's in grad school. Her name's Olive. And she's in grad school. And this is, it's not even her professor. It's another professor in the science program. And he's fairly young, I think. Like, their age gap really isn't that big. But Olive is trying to convince her friend that she's dating someone because her friend likes one of her romantic interests, and the friend's like, well, I don't want to pursue this because I don't want you to feel weird about it. And so Olive is like, okay, well, if I just pretend I'm dating someone, she'll think I'm over him, and then she can date him. So she's lying to her friend about where she's at and what she's doing, because she's working on her thesis or whatever science people do. And her friend comes in and she's like, what are you doing here? And so Olive grabs the first man she sees and kisses him, and it turns out to be a professor. And not just any professor. It is Dr. Adam Carlson, who is the mean, really strict, hard ass professor. And so the friend is like, oh my god. And so the rest of the book is just kind of them navigating this fake dating agreement that they come across, and how it's kind of weird because they're at school at the same time. But as you can see, I put a lot of tabs in this for my friend, for her when she read it, because like you have to read this book. It's fucking amazing. And there's a lot of just like cute, funny moments in this. It's not all like, I don't know, sciencey. There's some cute moments, and there's also, I like in Ali Hazelwood's books that she talks about like the experience of women in like a male-dominated career, because there are probably more science, like men in science. I don't know like an actual, I didn't fact check that. I don't know any statistics. I'm just assuming. Because they go to a conference and there's a man that approaches Olive and is kind of like mean because she's a woman. And Adam sticks up for her. And it's really cute. But like my favorite part, I mean there's a lot of my favorite parts in here, but I loved the like outside scene where they're at some kind of event and Olive ends up like slathering sunscreen all over Adam's back because her friend is like pushing her, because anytime they're in like an awkward situation, it was like the friend pushing them towards that situation, because she can't be like, no, I don't want to do that, that's weird, because the friend would be like, why not, that's your boyfriend. So they kind of had to like get in these silly moments that were some of my favorite things. But oh, I love this part that I just looked down and saw, because they're talking about, Adam says he doesn't like chocolate, but then there's a moment later where he keeps like protein bars that have chocolate in his bag for her because he like is concerned about her. So yeah, Love Hypothesis is just like a classic. I say a classic, it's a newer book, but you know what I mean. Like, it's just one of my new favorite books of all time, just because I feel like it was a really strong debut book, because if you wouldn't have told me it was her first novel, I wouldn't have guessed, because I think it was written really well and the characters were like well thought out, and the plot was good. It wasn't too like I'm trying to think of the word, it wasn't too predictable, there we go, because sometimes I like a predictable romance, because sometimes I just don't want to think while I'm reading. I just want to read and it like not take a lot of brain power, and I feel like these are kind of in that category, but she tries to make them like a little bit like, oh, what's gonna happen next, which I appreciate. And so after she released Love Hypothesis, she released Love on the Brain, and I think out of the three, Love on the Brain's my least favorite. And that's just because it followed Love Hypothesis, which for me is one of the most perfect books ever, because it just has a lot of the tropes that I really enjoy. And so Love on the Brain followed, and it's similar in the way that it's, you know, scientists, like instead of at college, they're like NASA or whatever. I don't even super remember the plot of this, I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, they're at NASA. That would have been so embarrassing. So two scientists at NASA, they're in two different fields, but they're working on the same project. And it's kind of like enemies to lovers, which I love enemies to lovers too. But I feel like in this one, it followed almost the exact same plot as Love Hypothesis, but I wasn't as invested, because the main girl, who I would have assumed that I just based on the cover, I would have liked her more, because I used to have pink hair, and she has like piercings, and she's like the cool scientist, but she kind of got on my nerves, and I feel like some of the things that Ali wrote in this book, I was not a fan of, like, because there's a moment, I think it's in the beginning, where the main girl, B, she has a twin sister, and she's talking to her sister on the phone, and one of them is like, I'm peeing right now. For what? Like, why did I need to know that? I don't care. Sorry. So some of the moments were kind of awkward in this one, but I did love Levi. I think I said this in the last video. Ali Hazelwood makes great book boyfriends. I have fallen in love with all three of these men. But I will say that Adam and Levi look a lot alike. So that's another thing that I was like, kind of seems like it's copying Love Hypothesis a little too much. But I thought overall, like, it was really cute. And I did kind of guess the things in this one more because I had already read Love Hypothesis. Because it kind of followed the same format of, oh, I know immediately who the bad guy is going to be. But I mean, it was fine. It was still really cute. So I think I gave Love Hypothesis and Love Theoretically 5 stars, and I gave Love on the Brain 4. Because there's a lot of things where B would just be like, oh, I'm so small, and he's so big, which I think comes up kind of a lot in Ali Hazelwood books, but it was really just too much in Love on the Brain. But I did like, there's a like Twitter aspect to this one because the main girl runs a science Twitter page that is like anonymous, nobody knows it's her. And I think the interactions she has through that account are really cool. And I liked that it was something a little different than some of the other books that I've read. But I like in this book how you can kind of tell that Levi doesn't hate her as much as she thinks. And so she's still like, okay, whatever, you hate me. And he's like, I literally do not. And she's like, okay, you're just saying that, like, to try to make it not awkward. And it's like, girl, he is so in love with you. And I will say that the smut on Love in the Brain was kind of better than the Love Hypothesis, which I am a smut enjoyer. I'll say it. Like, I don't care anymore. I'm not embarrassed. Like, I'm not gonna be one of those people that gets like the I love smut stickers and like sticks it on my Kindle or iPad or whatever. Because that's a little too far. But I will, when I'm talking about a book, I do like the smut scenes if they're good and not weird. Which I liked the ones in Love on the Brain and Love Hypothesis, but there was more in Love on the Brain. If that's something that, like, maybe you don't like as much smut, maybe you won't like Love on the Brain, maybe you'll like Love Hypothesis more, or vice versa. But yeah, because this one had a similar aspect of Love Hypothesis where they kind of went to a conference thing too, and like things kind of happened at the conference, so that was like another big similarity that I was like, girl, give us something a little different. And so I feel like with Love Theoretically, she maybe saw some of the things that people were saying. Because when she wrote Love Theoretically, instead of focusing on like the experimental science side, she focused more on like the academic science side, which I thought was cool because that's not something I really think about when I think about science. I feel like most of us probably think about things like Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain, where it's like conducting experiments and, you know, doing cool stuff. I don't know. But I think with Love Theoretically, she did a good job of experimenting and like trying to do more of the academic side than in the other two, which definitely made this one stand out a little more when you're looking at the three. And I think this one was maybe funnier. Like, she tried to make a main character, Elsie, who was like a little funnier than these two, but I think that's because it's not supposed to be like stereotypical scientist. Because Elsie, in order to help her make money, because professors don't make a lot of money, and that's just like across the board, that's not just science, she also does kind of a fake dating thing, but it's more like she goes on a fake date with a client, and then it's kind of like a one and done deal for the most part, because she uses an app, kind of like, I guess, what Tinder would be, but like specifically to find fake dates. But she has this client that she not like romantically likes him like that, but like he's a good guy and kind of a good friend to kind of have. So she agrees to go on more than one fake date with him so he can convince his family that he's dating someone. And so Elsie is dating this guy, and then he has a brother that's like an asshole, really like not nice man. His name's Jack, and Jack is not super nice to her, and I feel like he is like a little suspicious of the whole situation, but she's like, whatever, it doesn't matter, because it's just his brother and not like the rest of the family. And so then I think she's an adjunct professor, and she's trying to become like go to a different school and teach more classes and make more money. And so she's interviewing for the school, and one of the professors that she has to, they're competing, like she's competing against one other person for the job. And one of the people that she has to convince she's good for the job is Jack, of course, because it wouldn't be an Ali Hazelwood book without romance, you know. And so it just shows the process of her trying to interview and do like practice classes and that kind of stuff, which I knew a little bit about this going in, because my school has done where it's like you can come sit in on a professor who's interviewing for the school, and that's actually really fun to do if you're a college student. You just get to meet some cool people. But yeah, so this one, I'm trying to think. This one, the plot twist was a little different than the other two, which I agreed, because I enjoyed more than the other two, I think, because instead of like man versus woman, which is like stereotypical conflict, this was almost like woman versus woman, and then like Elsie having to like think about her feelings, like I shouldn't be tearing this woman down, like she's a woman in science like I am. And that was like a fun aspect, not necessarily fun, but like an enjoyable thing to read. And I just liked the relationship between Elsie and Jack, and I liked that there were some things that like you as the audience like weren't really sure what was happening, because you could tell that Jack had some kind of like conflict in his past that was holding him back from some things, and so getting to discover his backstory as well as Elsie's was cool. So yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I also read this one in a day. I think it took me a little longer to get through Love on the Brain, just because I wasn't as connected emotionally. But I definitely would recommend, if you haven't already, checking her out. Especially if you love romance, any kind of romance, because romance is my favorite genre. I love romance, and I feel like if you like romance, you'll probably love Ali Hazelwood. So yeah, I feel like I said a lot but also said nothing at the same time. But that's kind of the fun thing about talking about books, is sometimes you don't always know what you're gonna say about them, or like have any in-depth thoughts, because I wasn't like analyzing these books. I was just saying, oh, I like them, and this is kind of what they're about. And so I was trying, since I was talking about multiple books, I was trying not to go too spoilery into them. But I feel like if I were to focus on maybe just a video on Love Hypothesis, that's when I would be like, hey, I'm going to talk about every single page of this book, you know? But yeah, I feel like that was a good start to Ali Hazelwood if you don't know anything about Ali Hazelwood. So yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to like and leave me a comment, maybe saying what your favorite Ali Hazelwood book is, or maybe what your favorite moment is, or maybe if you haven't read her, give me some recommendations of other things to read. I'm always looking for more books to add to my ever-growing TBR. But yeah, this was this video. I also have a podcast with my roommate. It's called Hordes of Babylon. I can definitely link that in the description below. And make sure to follow me on Instagram, both of them, my personal and my Bookstagram. And yeah, I will see you guys next week. Bye!